the dog track deaths. While a lot of crazy, weird things have happened in Arizona before this one definitely takes the cake. It all started in 1965 when a man named David Jr. decided to open a new Greyhound track in central Arizona. He ended up building this track in a sleepy little town called Black Canyon City. While the dog track officially opened in 1967, it greatly upset the religious locals of the town. It wasn't just the religious townspeople who were upset by this, though. David Jr.'s sister, Charlotte, hated dog racing, and she wrote in her diary how much she resented her family for forcing this lifestyle on her. And despite the local protest, it became a huge success. And then in 1973, David Jr. left the dog track in order to open a new one in Las Vegas. This left his sister and her husband to run the business. And Charlotte hated this, and so she strongly objected, but her husband was excited to open the business and run it himself. And then in 1982, due to Charlotte complaining about all of the increased tensions and violence and everything, he came back to Arizona. The tensions between the locals and the track management became so bad that it went from not only protests, but to vandalism, death threats, and finally flaming bags with bricks being thrown through their windows. David Jr.'s pregnant sister decided that she wanted to shut the dog track down, and her husband argued for that. David Jr. refused to shut the dog track down, as he was in a great amount of debt, and the people that he owed it to weren't asking nicely anymore. The threats got to the point where David Jr. would show up to Arizona with his arm broken in 3 different places. And as time went on, attendance to the dog track dwindled to almost nothing, and this caused David to receive another convincing threat from the people he owed money to. David Jr. decided then on one last-ditch effort to revive the dog track. He bought ad space in Phoenix and Tucson that advertised the comeback of the century for the failing business. On July 10th of 1982, all patrons of the Greyhound track would not only receive $10 in betting credit, but also drink free between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Much to Charlotte and her husband Monty's disappointment, the response was overwhelming. As July 10th rolled around, David Jr. and Monty had to open the track early, while the dog races didn't even start until 10. Hundreds of people showed up to the dog track at 8 a.m. The response was so massive that Phoenix locals organized their own buses to transport them to this mass. During this opening, the decision to let people drink for free quickly became an expensive one. Monty opened the bar up at 10 a.m. By 10:30, the line for the bar wrapped on the lobby 2 times. The place was crowded and people were fighting over seats and space. People were winning money, losing money, laughing, crying, and drinking. And by 12 p.m., the party was in full swing. The first sign that something was wrong was around 11:45 a.m., when the lines for the bathroom grew twice as long as the line for the bar. And around 12:20, people in the lobby started to get sick. It was only a few at a time, and it grew quickly. Within an hour, people were vomiting where they stood. This spread to the grandstands even. The general told people it was merely a bad batch of liquor, and nothing else, and that it would pass. This obviously wasn't the case, when several people began a seizure in the lobby. And by 1:30 p.m., the first person was declared dead. This would be followed in quick succession by others. Death was spreading like a wildfire. Some were found to have dropped dead in the bathrooms, others simply never raised themselves out of their seats and died right where they sat, while others kneeled in the lobby in pain even. The local emergency services who were called after the first death were very slow to respond, and by 4:30 p.m., 618 people were dead. 1,000 more were hospitalized after that. Medical staff were called from every single town within a 200-mile radius, as tents were set up in the parking lot. Another 381 died just outside the dog track. The 999 deaths that occurred on that day were ruled as poisonings via arsenic. David Jr., Charlotte, and Monty all survived though. While many accusations were thrown around, nobody was ever charged with these killings. The governor of Arizona at the time ordered a hasty investigation and a purging of all mentions of the tragedy from local media, ensuring it wouldn't be picked up by national TV. All of the victims' families were allegedly bought off, and the investigation was closed on July 16th of that year. The governor was in a scandal of his own at the time and didn't want any more bad press for his state. The sad fact is no charges were ever filed for the case. The track closed that day and it was abandoned. Eerily, it's still standing today. It's able to be visited. The most confusing aspect of this is Black Canyon City's well water was also found to be contaminated with high levels of arsenic in 1985. Citizens today are served by a private water company due to the toxicity of their groundwater. Both the local authorities and the federal government refuse to investigate, ultimately leaving the culprit of this massacre a mystery.